Mayo, Pete is absolutely my least favorite person running for president. This is really underlined for me. I watched some of Tulsi Gabbard on The View, and we won't play it, but obviously I don't like Tulsi Gabbard. I've got huge criticisms of her, but I thought that whole Russian asset stuff is really disgusting and toxic, and she actually handled herself pretty well in that interview, and that really did underline. We didn't even play Andrew Yang's throwing Julian Assange under the bus. What a great dynamic guy that is. But Pete Buttigieg is the worst of all possible things. He's a corporatist. He's cozy with Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook.
He was former naval intelligence.
Former naval intelligence.
Remain.
Former McKinsey. The guy barely, and this is another thing that's incredible to me. This guy barely has any record. He's 35 years old, I think. What is he? 38. This is a fucking joke that he's even running for president. He is the mayor of a college town. This is a joke. To the extent he has any actual record other than he's, gotten a lot of degrees and written a book and is tight with Facebook, it is a record filled with profound racial problems. And also, incidentally, gentrification. But let's just stick with all of the policing and racism issues.
Appeasing a coup of racist cops, basically.
That's how the story reads, and I would read TYT Politics on it. And I don't mean just read. It's not opinion. They have the reporting. So the African-American community in the Democratic primary is not impressed with this guy. Now, there's two things I always say. One is it's horrifically stupid to speak about the black electorate as a monolith, and it's horrifically stupid to speak about any electorate as a monolith. There are vast class, geographic, and ideological differences. And number two, there is a rational reason why any demographic is, it makes total sense why, as an example, in this primary, I don't like him, but I totally understand why Biden is popular, and I totally understand why Sanders is popular. There is no reason why Pete Buttigieg should be popular, really with anybody. But if you are completely unknown and your primary introduction is, to the extent this guy has any record being the mayor of a college town and involves appeasing a racist white coup, I'm going to say probably not a super stoked option for African-American voters. And by the way, in such a way that actually could cut across geographic and ideological differences, because what the hell else is there else to say? Pete's interaction with the African-American community is aiding, apparently, racist police officers and supporting gentrification. People around him have said this is homophobia, which is stunning because it is the worst of both worlds, right? It is a great example of what you see, unfortunately, from all quarters, right? Like, oh no, you can't ask for the WFP totals. That's race. Just the shockingly cynical deployment of pseudo woke politics in any context to cover for power and to distract from political and policy questions, which does happen across the board. And then conversely, a actual raw, unmitigated example of essentialist racism towards the African-American community, of which I actually don't think there is any other example in this primary cycle that would come close to that. I think everything else has either been, Biden's had plenty of stuff, but that's because he's dealing with a long record of racism and he doesn't know what the hell he's saying half of the time. This has been an actual campaign strategy. We're going to get our campaign officials on Twitter and say slick shit like, oh, I wonder why they don't like Pete. To which everybody could say, maybe because Pete presided over a fucking racist police force. You morons. By the way, all poll numbers show that supposed myth of some special homophobia in the African-American community, which was always a exaggerated trope and highly racialized to begin with, guess what? Those numbers are tracking with the rest of the Democratic electorate, so you won't have that to hide behind anymore.
So the variable isn't skin color?
No, the variable shockingly was actually not like a melanin density in terms of hating gay people. What a shock. I got to tell you, the only person who slightly upped his estimation in my eyes during this campaign cycle is Julián Castro. And here he is with Trevor Noah going into Mayo Pete.
Mayor Pete Buttigieg made some news when he said he thinks that the Democratic race is now a two-horse race. He said it's between him and Elizabeth Warren. Many were like, wow, you've just written off Biden, you've written off everybody else. And he said...
Trevor, Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders, the person who's surging in all polls, who has always been one of the three main contenders of the race, who just had the three most significant young leaders in America endorse him. That's the other guy you're looking for,
man.
Trevor.
That's why Trevor gets paid the big bucks, folks.
Indeed.
Many were like, wow, you've just written off Biden, you've written off everybody else. And he said, this is what I'm doing. Was it strange for you having Buttigieg say that, especially considering that you are a mayor of a much bigger town? And you guys had a little spat back and forth where you said he doesn't have a great relationship with black voters. You know, you pointed to the incidents that have occurred in South Bend. He then said to you, well, why not come out to my neck of the woods and I'll show you around? Have you taken him up on that? What do you think you have that differs to him with regards to the experience of being a mayor?
Well, I actually have a good track record with black voters and with folks that I worked with in San Antonio, which I think is different. And my point was that we're going to need a nominee that can resonate in the African-American community. Black women have been those powering our victories everywhere from Alabama to, the 2018 wins. And so what I said was that it's risky to have a candidate at the top of the ticket that cannot speak to, in a convincing way, those different communities. And, I think the track record is there on his end. In San Antonio, my experience was the exact opposite of that. In fact, I got appointed to the Obama administration as housing secretary largely because of the work that we did on the east side of San Antonio, which traditionally was the African-American part of town.
Right.
And so I just think the track records are different. I'm sure that there's some things that he's done that are good things, and I have a lot of respect for Mayor Buttigieg. But I do think that our experience level is different. I don't need to go see South Bend. I saw 100 different cities when I was HUD secretary,
right.
And I was mayor of a city that's 14 times larger than South Bend. In fact, we could almost fit South Bend in our Alamodome in San Antonio. Right? So,
I mean, look, I'm going to stipulate, his HUD secretary record was not good, and I would be skeptical about what he was doing as mayor, to be honest, just because his record, I mean, look, he is not a progressive politician traditionally of the past, but everything else he said in that clip is to the 10th power. It could not be more true. And the media honeymoon and pass on Pete Buttigieg needs to stop, and people actually need to look seriously at his record, because in some ways it fuses the worst of all. I mean, he appeased white identity machine politics, police brutality, and is as cozy as you could possibly be with the most predatory, dangerous tech monopolies in the modern world, not even to mention the whole militaristic McKinsey dimension. He is awful. And saying it's about homophobia when the only thing apparent about his record is race problems is it's a race problem in his campaign. That is it.
Asking Castro to come to his neck of the woods sounds vaguely threatening when you consider what happened, which is, let's see if I can recite this. Pete becomes mayor. A scandal involving the first black police chief, as that black police chief recorded subordinates being racist beneath him. Right. Pete fired that guy. One of the racist cops on the tapes runs for sheriff later. That guy is funded by also Pete's main fundraiser. So, what's going on there?
I don't know. It looks a little fishy from my neck of the woods.
Yeah, read Jonathan Larson's TYT stuff.
Read Jonathan Larson's TYT stuff.
Oh, and share it with your. I mean, what is that? That's also PMC, I would guess.
Yeah, you're less politically engaged PMC.
Yeah.
What's a TYT?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they actually won't know enough to like dismiss it. So like, give them the stuff about, hey, your Pete Buttigieg guy, has a huge racist cop problem, and he should go away and let the real candidates.
Saw a guy in Prospect Heights with his book bag, and he had a Warren button and then a Pete button right under it. He's wearing cargo shorts. He had IPA belly.
That is
Very
really the
sad.
type of thing.
Dark
that
image, folks.
makes
Sorry
me-
to end it on that.
Wow, that's depressing. That makes me want to read about Pol Pot when I hear about people like that.